Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to discuss why people blame technology or use technology as a scapegoat. No. Alright guys, welcome back. Thank you for joining me in this special edition of the show. The pajama edition. It's really early on Thanksgiving morning, and I was supposed to record this yesterday, but I just thought, there's no way I'm going to record this if I have to go put on a shirt. So we're doing it in my pajamas, and my pajamas actually are not too different from my regular shirts. Well, not different enough to really matter. But today we're going to talk about technology and why people use it as a scapegoat. This is not a question. I did not receive a question on this. This is more a pet peeve of mine, a bee in my bonnet. This is going to be a, you know what really grinds my gears episode here. But the implication of a pet peeve, or the connotation, is it's not really that big of a deal, and for some reason this really small issue bothers you and the problem's more with you. But I think here the problem is more with the issue. It seems small, it maybe seems like it's not that big of a deal, but there is an epistemological issue here. When people blame technology, when people use technology as a scapegoat, there's an epistemological issue there that just kind of permeates other areas. And it's that epistemological issue. It's that flawed thought process that is the real problem when people blame technology or use technology as a scapegoat. I don't know. Have you ever heard anybody use this kind of reasoning? There's something wrong with culture, and when people do, I don't know if you've heard of anybody doing this. They say that technology is the fault. Like, oh, we have a short attention span because of Twitter. We used to be such great thinkers as a culture, as a civilization, until Twitter came along with its 280 character limit, and now people have a difficult time communicating, right? That's what is dividing us. Any cultural issue, it's Twitter. Just it makes us way more tribal and succumb to confirmation bias. It's Twitter's fault, or yes, smartphones are distracting us. It's the smartphones that are distracting us, and now people are saying more and more, and they say it like it's a definite fact. It is not a definite fact. It seems like a definite fact because everybody says it like it's a definite fact. It's a hypothesis that they assert as a fact, and that is Instagram is causing body image issues in young women and girls, teenage girls. And we know this because when the girls come into the clinic and we ask them why they have a body image issue or why they have an eating disorder now, they tell us it's Instagram. Oh, well, now we know. Since you just diagnosed yourself. Oh, thank you for clearing that up. Is the sarcasm here, is that breaking yet? And I wasn't going to talk about this. I mean, I've talked about this before in different ways. But I was at the barbershop not too long ago. And I don't know. I mean, it's like a dude barbershop. It's kind of like a bougie dude barbershop, but it's a dude barbershop. And you go there, they have the candy cane circular thing, cylinder out front. They have like a beer tap, like, oh, we're dudes. They have a Street Fighter 2 console. And I was there, and what these guys are talking about is this documentary on Netflix. I forget what it's called, but it was popular several months ago. This documentary on Netflix, and that asserts the claim, and this came out around the same time as the Facebook whistleblower, that, could you believe it, that Facebook actually engineers their pages. They do it consciously. They engineer their pages to make you stay more engaged with the platform. Who would have thought? So if you have an addiction, if you have a Facebook online social media addiction, the implication of this documentary is, and popular criticism, if you have this kind of addiction, the implication is it's not your fault, and it's Facebook and their engineers. This big evil entity we call Facebook and their engineers. They're the ones doing it. So why is this such a pet peeve of mine? Why does this bother me so much? Because it places the locus of control The control that humans have, it places it on the outside, which we all know is wrong. Like on a certain level, we all know it's not the right thing to do, but for some reason, when it comes to blaming technology, when it comes to having some kind of cultural critique because of technology, then it's okay to do, from the left and the right. And yeah, that's the problem. I mean, is it takes your locus of control and it places it outside of you. It says the reason why you do something is this thing out there. And that may seem relevant in certain cases, but the problem is when you take that premise as fundamental, then that argument acts as an infinite regress. Okay? So if you say, well, why do I have this problem with Facebook? Oh, it's because of Facebook. It's because of the engineers at Facebook. Okay, so the engineers at Facebook have more control over your life than you have control over your own life. You're taking what's in you and placing it outside you, and then you ask the question, and it's infinite regress, because then you say, well, where does their locus of control come from? If your locus of control comes from somewhere outside of you, where does theirs come from? What gets them to program Facebook to be the way that it is, to be engaging in the way that it is? Right? It's the same. It's logically, sorry to put on my Spock ears here, but it's just logically incoherent on the face of it. And it's kind of intellectually lazy too. Like it just indicates that somebody has not thought about an issue. And I'm not saying we can't look at technology and see how that influences us, but that's clearly not what's going on right now. If we're talking about, because of this whistleblower a couple months ago, right, whistleblower, because of what she was saying, and if we're talking about regulating Facebook, you're essentially saying this is controlling people's lives. And it's just not how technology works. I mean, the thing with technology is it's a tool. Right? It's a tool that gets us to where we're going faster. If we don't like where culture is going and we're blaming technology, guess what? Culture was already going in that direction. Right? Facebook shows up, and that just exposes a problem that we already have. And the corollary of this is the dopamine hypothesis. People love to bandy that around. I actually didn't watch that documentary on Netflix. I know somebody did, and they confirmed my suspicion about it. They just said, yeah, your assumption about it is right, because your prejudice, Mark, is always so much more accurate than anybody else's. But the corollary of this is to think that we stay engaged in something like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook because of dopamine. Right? Like we just sit there and we have no control over it. We look at the screen, we look at the computer screen that has all those thumbs up and thumbs down, and it gives us a hit of dopamine, which is a good argument in a way, because it's true. I mean, that stuff does keep you engaged through dopamine. But again, why do you want that dopamine hit in the first place? Why do you need that? Because you're in some kind of pain. You're in some kind of psychic stress. I don't know if you even know that you are, but you are. If you're addicted to these things, you are. And that's the easiest thing. That's the thing that's right there. If that wasn't there, believe me, you would find something else. And it kind of makes ludditism, it makes being a Luddite on the same level as wokeism. And there's tons of people on the right who are criticizing Facebook, saying, oh, it's this big evil empire that we need to be diced up, or we need to be heavily regulated. And okay, I don't want to get into the politics of it. That doesn't matter. Maybe there's some argument to be made for regulating Facebook, but it's not because it engineers its platform to be more engaging. I mean, this is exactly, the reason I brought up the politics in the first place, because this is exactly what the CRT people do on the left, on the Antifa woke academic left, is they say society is so structured. There is such a structure to society that inherently forms, right? There are inherent hierarchies in society, and the people at the bottom of those hierarchies do not have the freedom of the people at the top. So it's silly to talk about freedom. Let's destroy the system and bring in some sort of egalitarian, ideal. There is something, in a sense, inherently wrong in humans that sets up these hierarchies that inevitably oppress people. Well, you're making the same stupid argument, the same stupid external locus of control, infinite regress argument that you would criticize somebody on the left CRT making. And I think the inverse of this, it also bothers me because we see the inverse of this now too. The inverse is also true, or the inverse argument is also equally as invalid, and that is to think that technology will save us. That we don't need better ideas, right? Like, we don't need more individuated people. We don't need more people in culture or in a regulating their emotions, gaining a stronger identity and more self-awareness from doing that. We don't need that. We just need technology. And I would just rewatched a favorite movie of mine, Apocalypto. And I might talk about this movie. Got an email about this. I may talk about this movie more in depth because I wrote an essay about it when it came out, and I just never did anything with it. But there are actually some good points in there. Apocalypto, Mel Gibson movie. It came out in, what was it? I guess it was 2006. I guess it was winter or maybe December of 2006. Maybe you didn't hear about it because it was 15 years ago now, or maybe you didn't hear about it because, a few months prior, Mel Gibson made some interesting comments about some people. So I think they had to push the release back, and they're just kind of seem to fly under the radar to me. But maybe that's my perception because I think the movie's so incredibly awesome. And I'm watching Apocalypto, and it's about the Mayan civilization, the collapse of it, and about this guy's journey throughout it, and you see how it's collapsing. Just a great scene. A scene that I always latched onto and I really like. It's subtle, but when the priest is up there on the top of the pyramid and he's sacrificing the people to, quench the thirst of Kukulkan, and he's bringing out the prisoners, bringing out the captures, of which Jaguar Paw is a part of. And they're quenching Kukulkan, and they know Kukulkan is quenched when you get the solar eclipse, right? That's Kukulkan's sign that says, okay, you've sacrificed enough. And when the priest looks up, the priest stops the sacrifices and he looks up at the sun before there's an actual eclipse, because he knows it's coming. He knows the sacrifices of these captives, of these men. He knows that's not what's causing the sun to darken out in the day. He knows the solar eclipse is coming. This is early. If I told you how early on Thanksgiving morning this was, I'm recording this, you would be horrified. But let's go. I'm going to finish this. So he's looking up and he knows the solar eclipse is coming before everybody else does, right? The masses don't get it. They don't understand what a solar eclipse is. The priest does. The priest and the king, they know. And that's just a great, I call it the Mayan fallacy, the belief that technology is going to make your civilization inevitably better. The Mayans, they had a better calendar than we have. More accurate. Now, whether they actually made the calendar themselves, that's debatable. Maybe it came from the Olmecs, an earlier civilization in that area that we know less about. The big Olmec heads. The Simpsons have one of them. Blood Feud, great episode. It's not up to technology to save your culture, right? That's not going to make it better. If your culture sacrifices people to this god, literally like sacrifices their lives to a god, you're just going to use it to manipulate people in more nefarious ways. And that's what people think. It's so like with Bitcoin. I don't know. Like I'm not a Bitcoin expert, but I just think there's a lot of hype around Bitcoin. And I have a Bitcoin. I think, I don't know if it's a good investment. I view it more as guerrilla warfare against central banking. But I think Bitcoin's great. But look, guys, it's not going to save us. It's not going to be some catch-all that saves us. Like, that's what America was set up. America had their own Bitcoin set up. It was the dollar was backed by gold. We were on the gold standard. That was the Bitcoin of the 19th century. Well, what happened to that? I mean, you can blame central banking, put on your tinfoil hat. There were ideas. I mean, you can't blame that, again, because like there are ideas throughout the 19th century that had roots before the 19th century that effectively, I'm going to need to get into it now, that effectively said, what's a dollar anyways? Right? It doesn't matter what the dollar is. The collective matters more. You need to set up institutions that bolster the collective as opposed to the individual. And a central bank where you can print money, it effectively does that. Right? It makes the central government more powerful, and that's what we need to live more of a utopian, live in more of a utopian society. It's not some guys meeting on Jekyll Island. I mean, if you think that's what's going on, I mean, that's part of it. But, it's way, it goes way deeper than that. It goes back to culture. It goes back to ideas. Same thing with, it's the same issue with blaming Facebook. Okay, yeah, Facebook may influence us to some degree, and it's good to be aware of that. But there's cultural issues here. There's psychological issues that you have. If Facebook shows up, you latch onto that. It's not Facebook showing up, right? It's you latching onto that. It's you needing something to latch onto. Same thing with drugs. I mean, people who say that drugs are either all bad or all good. Again, these things are just tools. These things are tools that we use. Did the alcohol make you an alcoholic? No. And it's crazy to say this, but there's a non-zero amount of therapists and psychologists out there who would really think that if you just got rid of the alcohol, then the alcoholism, your dependence on it, is cured. And that's true, but you just take that alcoholism on something else. You become a Facebookaholic or whatever. Is it the thing out there? No, of course not. Yeah, I mean, is Bitcoin going to save us? Again, I mean, people thought they had a pretty sound financial system way before Bitcoin was ever invented. It doesn't really matter. Like, I don't know. These things are created by humans. They can be manipulated by humans. And by the way, I mean, what if there's a big solar flare and the electrical grid goes out for 3 years? You think Bitcoin's coming back? Less likely. So that's the video for this week. I just wanted to. I just want us to be wary, because it's easy to go on Twitter. It's easy to say, victimhood is such a problem. Oh, but Facebook, look what Facebook's doing. Oh, look, this whistleblower. Oh, Facebook is destroying us, and it's Facebook's fault. And people do the same thing. I know I brought this up with the opiates in the white community, crack in the black community, and we think that it was the crack, and the CIA implanted crack. I mean, maybe the CIA did put crack in the black community, but if crack comes along and destroys the black community, it was already destroyed. Like that great Will Durant quotation at the beginning of Apocalypto. A civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within. Same thing with an individual. An individual is not conquered from without by pixels on a screen before that individual is first already conquered. Right? They just have no compass. They have no emotional regulation and no identity. So yeah, Facebook shows up and your aunt, whatever, Debbie's complaining about something, and you're off. You're off to the races. Is it your aunt complaining on Facebook? I think it is something else. So that's my rant for this week. Thank you guys. Hope this wasn't too terrible. And yeah, happy Thanksgiving. This is one of my favorite holidays, I guess. It's like my favorite holidays. It's like my favorite GNR song. Whatever GNR song I'm listening to at the moment, that's my favorite song, and that's how I kind of feel about holidays. I mean, that's the idea behind ritual, is it works. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday now because today's Thanksgiving. Like, now is the time in the year to have Thanksgiving, so it's going to be my favorite. Like, I wouldn't as much as I like Christmas or 4th of July, I wouldn't want a 4th of July now. It's not time. So I'm happy about that. And I guess in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I just want to say thank you to the listeners, to the viewers out there. We're at 2,000 subscribers, which, boy, that really seems a lot for a channel. This dude just talks into a screen for 20 minutes. Yeah, a show that may as well be produced by Hugo Chavez. That's how you have a TV show. You just talk into a screen for 4 hours. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys, resonating with the ideas I talk about here. That means more than anything. Listening to your feedback, listening to how you interpret it. It's just great. I really appreciate that. So thank you for that. I think I did a 1K video, I think it was last Christmas, right? A year ago. Where I did like a special tour of my bookshelf. Maybe I'll do something like that for 2K. I don't know. Maybe I gotta think of something. But I'll get back to you on that, or maybe I'll do some extra video. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. I gotta say, we do free consultations, animusempire.com/schedule. I mean, we do a kind of therapy here that, if you really want to bolster yourself, want to understand what it's like to individuate, to take those unconscious issues and make them conscious in a healthy way. We have a therapy here that has delineated that process for doing it. And, we can take you through it and you're going to get there, right? Now, I can't say exactly how long it takes. There's temperament, there's trauma issues that may slow down the process or may speed up the process. It just depends on where you are. But we can get you there. And I think that's more important, to have a clear path laid out for you. Abstract though it may be, a path nonetheless. A path laid out for you where, okay, here's how your psychology works. And because this is how your psychology works, here's how it would be helpful to talk through your issues. What you do with that information, here's an endpoint to therapy that we all need to get to. Not that there's ever a definite endpoint to therapy, right? There's always more processing of emotional issues, but we can at least put you within a framework. If you're interested in that, again, free consultations, animusempire.com/schedule. Of course, you have my book, animusempire.com/book, to just to see what's going on here and see what I mean by emotional regulation and boundaries, and what emotions have a structure. Really, yeah, they have a structure, and it's not too complicated. Makes them less complicated to work through. Still difficult, but at least we can make it simple. All right, so thank you guys, and remember, don't remember anything. Just have a happy Thanksgiving.